Good evening, Gamecocks, and welcome back to Gamecock Gameday.
Stay tuned to hear our thoughts on the most recent matchups in South Carolina basketball, our Around the Horseshoe segment of the week, and what's coming up in Gamecock basketball.
All that and more coming up. Welcome to Gamecock Gameday.
Thanks for sticking with us, Gamecocks. I'm Zander Collins.
And I'm Austin McConnell. Gamecock men's basketball extended their losing streak on Saturday, falling 57-80 to Kentucky. They are now 0-10 in SEC play and continue to occupy the bottom of the conference. The Gamecock offense struggled from the start, shooting 32.8% from the floor. On the other hand, the Wildcats started out strong, outscoring the Gamecocks 33-19 in the first half.
Sophomore Colin Murray Boyles continues to lead the Gamecocks' effort, finishing the game with a team-high 14 points. Seniors Jacoby Wright and Jamari Thomas also finished with double digits for the Gamecocks, but it still wasn't enough to take down Kentucky.
Not good. Not good from men's basketball. They took on number 14, which is a tough opponent to take on, especially on the road, but they just couldn't wake up. Like I mentioned in my monologue, they just could not wake up at all. Colin Murray Boyles, again, was our leading scorer. He had 14 points, but it wasn't a great day for him either. He went 5 for 13, had 1 assist, and racked up 8 rebounds, but still getting no help. We had Jacoby Wright and Jamari Thomas were a little bit of help, but they went a combined 7 for 20 from the field as well. So just can't hit the rim, can't find the back of the net.
No, yeah, I mean, I think Wright and Thomas had okay games. It was really Colin Murray Boyles was the only player for the Gamecocks that did anything. I wanted to highlight a performance from Morris Ugasuk, who put up Tony Snell numbers, basically. one assist and 1 rebound in 23 minutes. He was just basically out there running cardio. But if you're going to win a game against a number 14, top 15 team in Kentucky, the shooting splits have got to be a lot better. 32% from the field, 18% from 3, and 65% from the charity stripe. Like, you're not going to win games shooting like that. And for comparison, Kentucky, 48% from the field, 38% from 3, and 90% from the line. So, I mean, it's really just what we've come to expect, unfortunately, this season for the Gamecocks. But for Kentucky, they looked really great, obviously. Brandon Garrison, 15 points. Also, Otega Owa had 17 of his own. It's just disappointing.
It definitely is. We live and die by the three-pointer, and right now we're only dying. We are just unable to put up shots. 19 for 58, like you mentioned, 32.8% from the field. We are just shooting 16% worse than these teams, and you can't beat teams by doing that. It is literally common sense. It is basketball 101. Score more than the other team, and you can't do that.
That'll do
shooting
it, yeah.
16% worse than them. So it's just been such a long year for Gamecock basketball.
Well, we've seen down the stretch this season how much free throws have been a problem for this team. I mean, it was the difference between winning games against teams like A&M and Florida. And I think teams are starting to notice that. Kentucky fouled us 20 times in that game. And, I mean, that's a lot of that's the easiest shot in basketball other than like a wide open layup. And for you to not be able to consistently knock those down, that's another reason why we're not winning games. It's just, it's astounding, to be honest. Like, I mean, I could shoot 65% from the line. Like, if you fouled me 20 times, I'd probably make about half of them. So, like, I don't know. They've got to either practice them more. I don't know if Lamont Paris is making them run if they miss or what, but it's definitely not translating. So there's definitely got to be some shooting practice going on.
If I'm not mistaken, last year there was an intramural basketball contest. It was like a free throw contest. And I think I went 7 for 10. So I
you
put
shot
my
better than they did against Kentucky.
Yeah, I did shoot better with. I mean, they are obviously way better at basketball than me. Don't look at my intramural basketball stats, but I mean, we've seen this over time. Nick Pringle missed a couple against Auburn where we should have won that game. We've missed a couple against Florida there down the stretch. So you're exactly right. Free throws have been an issue. I talked about how we live and die by the 3, but I think free throws have been our main issue. Off your point, Zane.
18%. Why were they still shooting them? Like, obviously there was something not going their way. So it's interesting to see, like you said, how they die by the 3. Like, they're not falling. Like I mentioned, Morris Ugasuk, he was 0 for 4 from the field. Like, so he didn't make he didn't make a shot. Like why are you still shooting? I guess it comes with confidence and stuff, but that was just the tail of the game for me, as they weren't knocking down shots.
Yeah, and it goes back to kind of what I was saying about Colin Murray Boyles getting no help. Like, we had Jacoby Wright, we had Jamari Thomas, but other than that, like, 0 points.
Zachary Davis has been playing better in the second half of the season. He didn't particularly play well in that one.
Zachary Davis,
7
though,
points.
is very inconsistent in my eyes. I think, he's another one of those players where we have such a great start and then he'll miss a couple towards the end and then everything starts to fall apart. So love you, Zach Davis, but the fact that you're like our second or third best player is a little concerning. I hope they figure something out by the end of the year, but we'll get to that.
We'll see.
Traveling over to the other side of the court, Gamecock women's basketball started the week strong with a swift 74-42 win over Georgia.
However, things took a turn for the Gamecocks when they traveled to take on number 4 Texas on Sunday. The Gamecocks suffered an uncharacteristic loss, snapping their 57-game SEC regular season win streak. The loss bumps them from the number 2 spot in the AP rankings all the way down to number 4.
After falling behind in the first half, South Carolina started a comeback campaign in the third, outscoring Texas 22-13. But it wasn't enough to stop the Longhorns as Sania Fagan missed a 3 with 9 seconds left on the clock, sealing the loss. Yeah, I didn't get to see much of it. I know we both went back and watched the highlights. I saw the final 5 minutes. I would say we did a good job of spreading the wealth offensively. We just couldn't get enough offense going there late in the fourth quarter. Same tale as men's basketball. Just couldn't hit those shots late when we needed to. Got outshot. Texas shot 44.1% from the field. Gamecocks shot 36.8%. So same tale, same narrative. It's tough to go into Texas. It's tough to beat them twice. Beat anybody twice, no matter the sport or season. It's just what shocks me is Texas didn't make 1 3-pointer all game.
Yeah, they only attempted a few.
They attempted 4,
yeah,
as we attempted 19. We ended up losing by 4. So it's just little stats like that, on paper maybe don't make that big of a difference in the game, but you kind of look at those stats and you're like, they didn't shoot 1 3 and they didn't make 1 3 and we made like 5 out of our 19.
Yeah.
So it looks like Don Staley took the Lamont Paris approach and decided to live and die by the 3 on Sunday. I don't love that approach. I'm more of a get inside, drive the paint kind of fan. But it just not enough production.
Well, you mentioned them not really shooting threes. They didn't have to. They were dominating in the paint. They outscored the Gamecocks in the paint 40-26, which is more than enough to make up for how much we lost by. It's like you look at the top 3 performers for Texas: Madison Booker, Taylor Jones, Kyla Odekri. They were all down low the whole game. For instance, Kyla Odekri had all of her points in the paint, a lot of those in the fourth quarter. You saw Don Staley kind of switch things up. She didn't even play Chloe Kitts in the fourth quarter because she was just trying to switch things up because nobody could stop their interior game. And with them being a bigger presence down low, they also were just getting more offensive rebounds and creating second chance points. And that, like I've said that in the men's segments, like that's something that they don't do particularly well either. But even in this game, there were inconsistencies in shooting from the women's team. 36% from the field, like you mentioned, 26 from 3, and they had similar splits from the free throws the men's did in their loss. It's just like you see in the games that they've lost this season, they've struggled shooting, and that makes sense because if they're not falling down, you're not going to score points. But I mean, I think that for us to have lost to Texas, it's obviously huge. It breaks the SEC streak going back to 2021. But for you to be worried that your team has lost their second game of the season and it's almost March, I think it's not the worst thing in the world.
No, and if you go back and look at their resume, they already have so many ranked SEC wins for that matter. And they have UConn coming up, which we'll talk about later in the episode, but they have good wins. I'm not worried about them at all. They are still currently the 1 seed in the latest bracketology projection, so not too worried about them. My only thing was in the fourth quarter, it looked like they were trying too hard to draw a foul. They weren't getting the 3-pointers to work. You mentioned the paint points that we had. We were trying to mix it up just a little bit. A couple times we were flopping a little too much. I'm not a fan with that. I'm like, just go up hard with it, go up to the hoop, and if you get a foul, great. If you don't, at least you went up with the attempt to make it, and just didn't go our way.
Well, it's always the intention to play through the contact. You're going to want to try to hit the basket regardless if you're going to get fouled or not. You saw when there were about 37 seconds left, Tessa Johnson driving hard. She thought she was fouled, didn't go for the board, and it ended up with Texas grabbing a very important rebound.
Yeah.
So she was kind of looking at the ref and left her girls out there to not get the rebound, and it ended up being very costly because that possession saw them. I think they scored right on the other end. So it's just, I mean, I think that for a team that's so good, it's like the first time that they really showed that kind of behavior, I guess. But I mean, obviously it's disappointing to lose, but
I think it just stems from some frustration as well.
Yeah.
I mean, they went undefeated last year and won the national championship. That's extremely hard to do. So they have high expectations for themselves. So getting their second loss of the season for what feels like the first time in forever is definitely going to be frustrating. It's definitely going to take some character development. But I'm honestly fine with them losing now because it teaches them how to lose. It teaches them how to get into these tight games. And it also teaches them when they're down, don't get counted out. You've been there before. They've had comeback wins, and they've had wins where they've lost the entire time. Like, they didn't lead against UCLA at all. So they've had those rough games. I'd rather them figure out how to avoid those now versus in like an SEC tournament play or better, worse, the NCAA tournament.
And Dawn Staley said that in the press conference after the game. She said she's happy that they still control their destiny. Yeah, because, I mean, at this point, I mean, regular season, obviously, you want to have a strong resume going into it. So you, like you said, you maintain that 1 seed. But right now, it's looking like they might even get the 2 seed in the SEC tournament.
Mm-hmm.
So, but their season's by no means over. Like they're just going to learn from this, as you said, Austin, and come back stronger, like we thought they were going to do after UCLA, and they did. But it's just unfortunate they got their second loss.
And I mentioned it when we started talking about them. It is so hard to beat a team twice in the year, especially on the road, especially in Texas. I mean, they are just a rowdy crowd, rowdy environment. They are into every sport over there, just like we are, just like the whole SEC is. It's very hard to beat a team of that stature and that environment. So props to Texas. We did beat Texas earlier in the season when they were ranked number 5, so that goes back to the resume talk I was talking about. But, you know, hard to beat a team twice, hard to beat them on the road. It was just an off day for the Gamecocks.
Yeah. Coming up after the break, Austin and I will look to gain some redemption against our new guest in Around the Horseshoe.
Coming up on Around the Horseshoe. Baseball season is around the corner. Who will step up as the Gamecocks seek success under their new head coach? Women's basketball falls on the road. What does this mean for Dawn Staley's team moving forward? And we take a look at the Gamecocks transfer portal and ask, is it enough? Well, folks, they haven't kicked me out yet. We'll see how it goes after this week. Welcome back to another edition of Around the Horseshoe, where we put our panel's knowledge and takes on Gamecock sports to the test. You, of course, know these fine gentlemen, Zander Collins and Austin McConnell. Joining them as our guest this week is our very own SGTV programming director, Dakota Morris. Hello, everyone, and happy early Valentine's Day.
Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you, Ryan.
Early Valentine's Day to you well. I love the pink suit, by the way.
Yeah, I love the glasses. Love
Thank
that
you.
we're all showing a good, nice, festive theme ahead of this holiday. Dakota, thank you for joining us.
Of course.
How are you feeling about this week?
Glad to be here. I'm obviously up against some tough competition, but I'm excited. I'm excited to see how it goes.
Yeah, well, I'm excited too. Thank you again for joining us. And let's not stall any farther. Let's go around the horseshoe. We begin with a look inside Gamecock Baseball as they open their season against Sacred Heart this weekend. USC made a lot of off-season hype with their hiring of Paul Maneri out of retirement as their new head coach. Maneri now holds the highest number of wins by an active head coach in Division I baseball. His time at LSU resulted in 6 College World Series appearances and a national championship in 2009, which he hopes to replicate with the Gamecocks. On the players' end, the Gamecocks see star infielder Ethan Petrie return to the lineup. Petrie won a slew of preseason awards, including multiple preseason All-American selections. However, with the departure of catcher Cole Messina, a lot of hitting production has left from the Carolina dugout. Due to this and all of the changes, SC is not slated to finish very highly in the SEC this season. SEC coaches slated them to finish 14th in the conference above Ole Miss and Missouri. With a lot of work ahead of him, Maneri will look for someone to take the load off of Petrie's shoulders. So, who will it be? We'll start with our guest this week, then we'll go Austin and finish up with Zander.
All right, so for a little bit of help for Petrie, my first person for the offensive side of the ball, I'm going to say Blake Jackson, 5th-year senior with the Gamecocks. Last year he had a .239 batting average, 5 home runs, and 27 RBIs. Not too bad. He's also 24 years old. He's getting up there. He's the oldest on the team and one of the oldest in college baseball right now. So hopefully he can use some of that, SEC baseball knowledge and that time that he has with the team to really contribute this year and help Petrie out on the offensive side. And also hopefully get himself into the league. So this is a big year for him to step up and really show what he can do at the plate so he can get a chance at getting to the lead. And then on the defensive side of things, well, also the offense, but I'm going to go with Henry Kachmar, junior shortstop from Ohio State. He led the offense at Ohio State with a .320 batting average, 7 home runs, and 10 doubles and 36 RBIs. Again, pretty good numbers, and that was as a sophomore. So now he's a junior. He's got a little bit more time on his hands. And then for defense, he's expected to be starting at shortstop for the Gamecocks. I would like to see what he can do there. Had a good bit of success at Ohio State in that position with 87 putouts and 149 assists. He also did have 12 errors, though, which is a bit much for a season. So hopefully he can get that under control. Hopefully he's gotten it under control by now and will really be, a strong defensive player for the Gamecocks. And then also Dylan Askew, he'll be starting on the mound on Friday. So I'd like to see him step up and maybe lead the bullpen as well.
Man, I was going to say Dylan Askew. I was hoping you'd get through that without mentioning him. But I am going to start by saying the entire defense as a whole needs to step up. They need to limit the runs this year, especially without the power that they had last year at the plate. So they're going to have to play well on both sides of the ball. But I'm going to start by saying Dylan Askew and Matthew Becker, who I think are both in the starting rotation this weekend against Sacred Heart. But if we're looking for one player, I'm going junior Will Tippett. He has been described as a super sub by head coach Paul Maneri, and he could play anywhere. He could play first base, third base. He can switch with Ethan Petrie depending on the lineup we're playing, depending on where Maneri wants to put him. But Maneri also said that he had a great fall stint at the plate. He was seeing the ball very well. It was almost a surprise to him to see how well he was hitting the ball in the fall. So he could be a great use on the defensive side at third or first base. Like I said, him and Petrie going to be like kind of the duo. Would be really cool to see, just both in the infield and at the plate. So I'm going to say junior Will Tippett.
Okay, you mentioned, Ryan, one of the biggest holes going into this season is losing Cole Messina. So my first name on my list, or my short list, was Max Kaufer, transfer from Texas A&M. Kind of for the same reasons as some of your players. Got that SEC experience. He's coming back from an injury. Hopefully that means he'll be well rested and ready to really attack this season. Won the Johnny Bench Award for best catcher in his time at Texas A&M. Also second team All-American. So I think with losing a player of Messina's magnitude, I think it's important to bring in the right kind of replacement. Also on my list, Jarvis Evans Jr. transfer from Georgia. Like I said, SEC experience, best baseball conference. So he might not have played a whole lot in Georgia. I think he just had 16 games last season, but it's important to take the load off the guys like Askew and have a relief pitcher that is competent in the SEC. Lefty, kind of switch things up as well. And it doesn't really hurt to have a lot of players in the most important position in baseball, a pitcher.
Yeah, well, a lot of big names mentioned, a lot of transfer names coming in. Zander and Dakota, you guys both mentioned the importance it is to have that experience, that SEC experience. Just like we talked with softball last week, the SEC is one of the top conferences, if not the top conference in college baseball. So when you're looking at a schedule that has teams like LSU or Florida or Texas A&M, as we mentioned with the catcher transfer there, it's important to have that experience coming in with a sort of new look program that Maneri is trying to build. And of course, Maneri has that experience as well with his time at LSU. Austin, however, I'm going to give you the 2 points for this. I think it's important to see growth in the players that we've already had in the program, Will Tippett being one of them. And I, just like you mentioned, expect him to really put his best foot forward at the start of this season and really help elevate this team to a new level on the plate and in the infield. Zander, I'm going to give you the 1 point for this one. Have you start out strong this week? Because you mentioned that experience and how important it is to have a catcher replacing someone who is the caliber of Cole Messina, having such a great pickup in our new catcher from Texas A&M. imperative to really have some experience at that position as well. So I really like the take on that. So that's 2 points for Austin, 1 point for Zander.
Already halfway to my tally of last week, so I'm very happy with that.
Starting off strong this week. And we'll move on to a look onto the court from this weekend. South Carolina women's basketball traveled on the road to Austin this weekend to take on number 4 Texas. After beating the Longhorns at home earlier this season by a very wide margin, the Gamecocks were bested on the road with a final score of 66-62. This is not Carolina's first defeat this season, as they fell to now top-ranked UCLA in November with a score of 77-62. However, this is SC's first loss of the new year and their first SEC loss in 57 games. LSU head coach Kim Mulkey said it best in her post-game interview a few weeks ago. How do you plan for a team with 10 McDonald's Americans on their roster? So, how did Texas do it? Is Carolina finally showing a weakness, or was this just not the right day for the Gamecocks? Austin, let's start with you.
Well, I'm going to repeat a lot of what I said when we were at the desk, Zander. I'm going to say yes, it was an off day for them because their 36.8 shooting percentage hasn't been that low since their January 24th game when they played LSU, and they still won by double digits. So South Carolina knows how to win games even when they're not showing up on the stat sheet. The only other time they shot worse than 36% was back in that November game against UCLA on the road. So I think it's just, again, like I mentioned earlier, it is so hard to win on the road in this conference. It is so hard to beat a team twice. I think they just ran into both those narratives when going into Texas. You must also remember that we beat Texas at home already. We have already beaten them when they were inside the top 5 as well. This time we are on the road in that rowdy environment. We are battling uphill the entire time. So I'm going to say off day, but we aren't playing as threatening as we did last year. We need to get back into a groove as we get closer to March.
I kind of went for the opposite approach, Austin. I think that there are a lot of similarities between the 2 losses on the season in UCLA and of course in Texas. I think that to repeat myself from the desk over there, like having a big presence down low has really killed the Gamecocks. You look back at the UCLA game and Lauren Betts had a double-double with 11 points and 14 rebounds. When they have someone down low that can just turn around and put the ball up, it's been a struggle for the Gamecocks. And in both of those games, they did struggle to shoot from all 3 levels. And it's when they play against someone who's bigger, and for instance, Kyle Olakri and Taylor Jones, they had incredible games, and they weren't even the top scorers on the team for Texas. That was Madison Booker, also a forward. So it's when they go up against teams that are bigger than them. It's really their Achilles heel. They're as close to a perfect basketball team as possible, but I think that poor shooting coupled with playing against big presences down low has really been what's gotten them this season.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to agree with both of you just a little bit. Well, for one, I think it was an off day. I mean, the Gamecocks are an incredible basketball team, and so is Texas. I think that's what some people let get away from them, that South Carolina is unbeatable, and the fact is we're not unbeatable. And Texas was number 4. They're now number 3. They're a good ball team as well. It's not a terrible loss, just like UCLA was also a good ball team. And like you said, we did beat Texas just like exactly a month ago today, actually. We beat Texas, and they shot their team low, 28%, and they jumped to 44% for this game. So was it a one-off for SC, or was it a one-off for Texas jumping that high from the last time that we played them? I think, like you said, the home field advantage, it's a big thing. It's real. CLA is packed every time that we have a women's basketball game. And honestly, the men's team is not that good either, but it's usually pretty packed then too. So I can't imagine what it was like at Texas. And when you're a big team like South Carolina, everyone wants to see you lose. Besides, obviously, us here at South Carolina, you want to see those big dog lose, just like in football. I like to see Georgia lose, So it was probably crazy in there. It's a hard environment to play in on the road. But the thing is, they are going to have to learn how to play on the road like that. Obviously, in the tournaments coming up pretty soon, they're going to have to be able to deal with that. And I think they just need to calm down sometimes when things get away from them. I think they're used to being able to just run away with the score. And then when they can't, they they just kind of panic a little bit. And like you said earlier, they were just like looking for fouls. And you can't do that. You have to play the defense as well. And like you said, with the big presences, they don't have Camila Cardoso anymore, who usually was their big presence. And Aaliyah Boston before that, I don't think they have someone like that right now. It would be great to see someone step up. But I just think it was an off day. It's a tough loss, of course, but it's not a bad loss. I mean, Texas is a Final Four team right now, and that's who we want to be playing against. And like Don Staley said, they still have control over their future. Things are going to be tough, but they have the ability to come back from this, of course.
I do want to touch on one thing real quick. I agree with both of you, actually. I really enjoyed listening to both your takes. Excuse me. I think when you look at the new AP poll, 2 of the teams that we lost to are in the top 3, and then the other team is Notre Dame, and they have a very impressive resume as well. So it's not like we're losing to, unranked Georgia or Florida or something like that. We are going up against the big dogs of the league. So I really like what you said there, but also what you said, Zander, where it's like when you go up against these strong teams, our weaknesses are getting exposed, but we do still have 10 McDonald's All-Americans, like you mentioned, Ryan. So I think the off-day factor comes from, we're always going to be recruiting well, especially while Don Staley's here. We're always going to have that talent on the roster. But as to their points, they also mentioned that, running into those big giants in the league, it's going to be a lot tougher than it was last year because of our size leaving our team last year.
As you kind of touched on, Austin, it is a very interesting question because I really do believe it was kind of a mix of both, the perfect storm, if you will, that kind of really combined for the result this weekend in Austin. I think we really are not as good in our big play as we have been in seasons before, as Dakota touched on, and Zander, you mentioned a little bit earlier, of having to match up with Texas's bigs. We just did not have an answer for that this game. And what we also didn't have an answer for is going on the road and playing against a team who has thousands and thousands of fans screaming against you at the top of their lungs for the entire duration of the game. I mean, when you have momentum go against you in that environment, it just amplifies it. It amplifies that shift in momentum by so much. And so that's why I'm gonna give Zander the 2 points for this. He's racking it up. But
Kids play this week.
You're exactly right with the point that Texas's bigs were just a bit too much for us in this situation, and they were able to control the momentum of the game, and with that amplification, the Gamecocks just were not able to get back.
Well, I think for it to be a one-off thing, it couldn't have happened against UCLA, and it did. When they play against bigs like that, it's just been a struggle for them.
Absolutely. And of course, with Texas playing the Gamecocks already, as you mentioned in CLA earlier, they have the ability to look back on that game, make the necessary adjustments, and come into a more positive environment towards their team where they can control the momentum just that little bit more. And Dakota, I'm going to give you the 1 point for this as well. And just as you mentioned, it's it's just having the talent differential, I think. It's just really the struggle of, yes, we play these top SEC teams every week. Yes, we're going to play these SEC teams multiple times, but you do have to make an effort to prepare for that. And it's very clear that Texas did. They made the adjustments necessary to be able to control their home environment a lot more. And it just looks like South Carolina didn't give that much of a push that they needed to do in order to end up on top. So 2 points to Zander, 1 point to Dakota. And finally, we'll take a look at the gridiron and some off-season moves by South Carolina. In his career, head coach Shane Beamer has been known to make some big news in the transfer portal. That seems to be the case this offseason as well, as the Gamecocks have signed some highly acclaimed talent in this year's portal window, including Utah State running back Rashul Faison and Ohio State five-star signee Air Noland at quarterback. However, the Gamecocks are losing a lot of talent to the NFL, including consensus All-American edge rusher Kyle Kennard and star running back Rocket Sanders. Now, we've already seen a glimpse of how Carolina's offense has looked without these key pieces as they fell 21-17 to Illinois in the Citrus Bowl. But with this being in the middle of a change at offensive coordinator, and without these new portal pieces being able to play in Orlando, it's not a direct show of what we'll see come August 31st. Yet the question remains, are these pickups enough for the Gamecocks? Is this effective targeting from Beamer and his staff in regards to the holes that need to be filled? We'll start with Zander.
Thinking about this next season and what holes the NFL might bring to our team, for me, it was really 3 or 4 big positions. Obviously, you want to, well, not necessarily in this draft, but next draft, you'll likely see Lenore Sellers be a very sought-out prospect. So quarterback, Aaron Nolan, building for the future, I love that a lot from Shane Beamer. You've seen his track record with being able to recruit quarterbacks, specifically like Aaron Nolan and Spencer Rattler. Maybe they didn't work out so much at their first school, and then they come in and they become a very decent quarterback. You think running back, because we're not only losing Rocket Sanders, but we're also losing Oscar Attaway. He's out of eligibility. You mentioned Kyle Kennard and also Nick Emenwari in the draft this year. So I think that with what they brought in running back, Rashul Faison, that's a great replacement for Rocket. Emenwari is a safety, but he's brought in 2 very highly rated cornerbacks in Brandon Cisse from NC State and Miles Norwood from Ball State. So I think that shoring up the secondary is also a great move. And then obviously Kyle Kennard, Shane Beamer's only first team All-American player, and they've brought in maybe not players at edge like he played, but players to surround Dylan Stewart on the defense and really make it a stronger team. Players like former 5-star and number 3 in his recruiting class, Gabe Brownlow Dindley from Texas A&M. That's a huge pickup. It's got a grade of 90 on 3. So, and also linebacker Sean Murphy is a huge pickup from Florida State. And I think that while it may not be position for position on the defensive side of the ball like it is on offense, I think that they've done a great job recruiting players. And even in positions where it wasn't a huge need, they've brought in players like Jordan Dingle at tight end, who is the tight end is a safety blanket, and we've seen how much Lenore Sellers relies on the tight end when he can't get that first read out there. And Josh Simon was a huge player for us this season, so getting another player like that is huge. And I think that, we saw how quickly a transfer portal can turn around our season. We brought in Kyle Kennard and Rocket last transfer portal season, so I think that it's. Right. On paper, it looks really good. I think that they've done it in all the right places.
Yeah, I'm going to have to agree. I think Shane Beamer obviously is famous for being a great recruiter, and he's done it again. We did lose a couple of tough, holes to fill with Rocket Sanders and Oscar Attaway running out of eligibility and stuff. Those are some of our key players, but I think we have people to fill those gaps, like you said. Defensive tackle Gabriel Brownlow Dindley from Texas A&M is really going to help fill those gaps, and I hope that it really brings some depth to the defense on the team. Also, 4-star edge Jalen Brown from Missouri, SEC experience again. Hopefully he'll be able to team up together with the rest of the defense and just do something good for us. And then for the offensive side of the ball, I know we have new quarterback recruit, but I really just hope Lenore Sellers can be that second half of the season quarterback he was last year in the beginning of the year and really set the tone for the Gamecocks. I don't think it should be up to everyone that's coming in this year. I think Lenore Sellers, being here last year, he needs to set the tone for the team and lead the team and not wait until the middle of the season to get things going. And I just really hope that he steps up in the first half of the season and be the quarterback we saw in the second half of the season. And then also for kicker, I know we're not really big Alex Herrera fans. So I'm excited to see what 3-star Max Kelly right out of high school has for us. He's favorited to get that kicker position right now. I don't know too much about him, but I do know that I'm excited to see somebody else
Finally.
in the position, and hopefully we'll have some good things to say about him next semester when the Gamecocks get back on the field. So I also think that this is going to take time. Again, losing big players like this, you kind of have to build back up a little bit. But Shane Beamer is a great coach, great recruiter, and I think this season he's really got something with this team.
I agree with you, Dakota. I'm really excited for this season. I think I touched on it last semester when we were talking specifically about football the entire time, but Shane Beamer is so good at building foundations like that. But like you mentioned, he is known for getting in that transfer portal. He's known for getting in there and picking up some big guys. I really, really love the Aaron Nolan commit. I was a little shocked to see it at first because that was literally a couple days after Lenore Sellers, I know, re-signed here, which is crazy to use in college football nowadays. But he's a great backup to have. He can learn behind a very good Lenore Sellers as long as he plays how you mentioned in the second half of the season all year. Hold on to the ball, please. That's my only Lenore's critique of the day. But Aaron Nolan getting to learn from him, and God forbid Lenore's has an injury like he did at the beginning of last year, Aaron Nolan can step in and get some experience, or even if we're blowing out teams or God forbid getting blown out, he can also step in there as well and get that experience. I'm going to take it to a statistic standpoint. We got about 13, 14 transfer portal commits this year, where as the last couple of years we have had 5 or 6 less than that. So I think already our successful season last year is building something here at South Carolina. We just re-signed Shane Beamer to an extension, so I think it's going to be really, really important to have Shane Beamer here and just keep the recruiting class going, keep getting those transfer portal recruits, just so we keep building on the successful season last year. I said it last week with you, Zander. I don't want to take 2 steps back after taking 1 step forward, excuse me. We kept Dylan Stewart, kept Lenore's, all the guys that were a big part of that season last year. I think it's really important. I know there are holes in the defense that I think we can all agree on, but I do like how we're getting depth at every position, no matter if there's holes in them or not. I think we lost a lot of great guys, but we filled most of them with at least somebody that can make a difference, and I think that's good for those younger guys who are stepping up into that position because they know the shoes they have to fill. They know the stakes that are on their shoulders. So hopefully they don't see it as pressure and they see it as an opportunity to, continue making South Carolina edge you or linebacker you or whatever it may be. So only time will tell, and on-field production matters, but I believe Shane Beamer hits the portal better than most coaches, definitely better than a lot of the coaches in the SEC, definitely better than that guy over at Clemson, and I'm hoping we can be competitive in the SEC again this year.
Well, I absolutely agree. I feel like this is a class that's a little bit more overlooked than some of Beamer's previous transfer portal classes have been, but that's not necessarily because it's a bad class. It's just an underrated or maybe even just an overlooked class of talent from the SEC, from outside the SECs. We mentioned Aaron Nolan coming in from the Big Ten, from Ohio State, program that just won the national championship. That's a huge pickup. Was a huge signing for Ohio State. Now it becomes a huge pickup for us and Shane Beamer in the transfer portal. And I think he's done a really good job this year of targeting the holes and getting guys in who maybe aren't as flashy, maybe won't, get quite up to the level as someone like Kyle Kennard or even Rocket Sanders, but someone who has the experience and can fit into this team immediately. And I think that's what Shane Beamer has done a very good job with in this transfer portal class so far. With that being said, Zander, you're going to get the 2 points for this, and you're going to be our winner for this week.
Oh,
Am I dreaming?
You must have been nice to Ryan before this.
Yeah, I mean, I must have really buttered him up. I know Austin did try.
I tried.
Austin
You
did try. I stayed silent,
try.
made sure to just do my talking at the stage, and I think it worked out.
Was that it? Did you feel like it was too sarcastic? Because it wasn't. I really like the fit today. I love it.
No, it wasn't sarcastic at all. I just think Zander really brought in...
No, you
take
just
was
don't know
bad.
ball, yeah.
I just think Zander really brought in the point of he's getting the players that he needs to get, and he's addressing the issues that he needs to do. And even if it's not, someone as flashy, if it's not, the top-rated recruits at XY position, except for Rashul Faison at running back, he was one of the top targets in the portal at the time the Gamecocks signed him. But otherwise, he's just getting people who have experience and who can fit right in on day one. And I think that's when you have such star players that are leaving your program, and with the state of how college football is, how you can just get players from wherever, you need to have that mentality of who are guys we can get, who we can rely on day one, who have that experience. And so with that, Zander is our winner this week. Dakota, thank you so much for
joining us.
agreeing to join us here this week. And we will be right back with more Gamecock Game Day right after this.
Welcome back, Gamecocks.
Here's a look at the upcoming Gamecocks basketball schedule. Gamecock women's basketball looks to get back on track at Colonial Life Arena tomorrow night against Florida. Then College Game Day will be back in the Palmetto State on Sunday for a highly anticipated matchup against Paige Beckers and the UConn Huskies.
Lamont Paris and the men's team will return home tonight to take on number 19 Ole Miss at 7. They then will face number 3 Florida Gators in Gainesville on Saturday.
What do you want to start with? Do you want to start with the women's team, or do you want to
Yes,
start with the
I'm
men's?
so excited that
Okay.
College Game Day is coming here. I'm going to be at that game with my parents. I mean, I've wanted to see Paige Beckers play since she was like the top rated recruit in high school, like as a middle schooler basically. So, so that'll be a really fun game for them. Obviously, UConn will be a huge boost to that resume, as you were talking about. They're number 7. Paige Beckers and Sarah Strong both averaging upwards of 17 points a game. So it'll be a really, really fun matchup. I think it'll be pretty close. And unfortunately for UConn, they're going to be playing at CLA, kind of that advantage we were talking about for Texas. So I don't know. I think that one will be really fun. I'm looking forward to that one a lot.
Yeah, this is a huge bounce back game for the ladies coming up. But don't overlook Florida. Get through Florida. All right, I know. But we talk about it. The SEC. Everybody in the SEC can win at any time. It is the strongest conference. I mean, Florida's going to go out and blow North Florida out of the water. Like, they'll beat the other teams, but just don't overlook them. Don't get upset,
Okay.
especially at home, because then we'll have some real serious conversations we'll have to talk about. But just trying to prepare for this UConn matchup, get through Florida, get another SEC win, because we know how hard it is. I talked about trap game for Ole Miss. This could be one for the Gamecocks. But that's my rant. Just want to get through it, take one game at a time. One of my favorite coaches growing up always said, go 1-0. Just go 1-0 every week. They don't need to beat UConn, but if they do, it'll definitely give them the reputation that they normally have. It'll give them that back, I guess you could say. Just because they already have so many ranked wins in the bank already, it would help their stock if they could bounce back and beat UConn and get closer to locking up a 1 seed in the tournament. But necessarily, I don't think they need to. Just keep it tight, make it a good game. You still have room for error, but if you want a 1 seed, you got to beat UConn.
Yeah. Stat for UConn is 2-3 against ranked teams, so Big East is not that all that competitive, like the SEC is. But going back last week, I want to apologize to the Georgia women's basketball team. They did move up in the standings. They had a 1-point victory against Arkansas, so they're no longer at the bottom. So, like you said, you can't overlook those teams. But I think Florida is they're the definition of an average team. They're 12-12. They're 11th in the SEC. They got good players like Liv McGill. So I mean, it could be one of those trap games, like you said, but I don't necessarily think that it's going to be too difficult of a one. It's definitely going to be the game where the Gamecocks get their anger out on that loss from this weekend. But
you also got to take into consideration that these teams that are 12-12 in big conference games, or big conferences, I should say, they are on the border of the tournament. They are looking for that one big win to get them in there. That's what got South Carolina in last year. They got that, or the men's team, I should say. They got that win against Kentucky. They got that win against Tennessee. And then they won their games that they needed to from there. And we were like, all right, we're going to the tournament. This is awesome. Florida could have the same mindset this year. If you go on the road and you beat South Carolina, the South Carolina of women's basketball, it's going to be a party in Gainesville if they can. Obviously, you know, I'm saying all this like I'm hyping up Florida. I think South Carolina's going to blow them out by 30. But I'm just saying, don't overlook them, because this is Florida's opportunity to get that resume-boosting win and go for March Madness. So just don't overlook them. That's all I can say.
I feel like we probably should have started with the men's team, so maybe we could have ended out on a positive note talking about the women's team. But
yeah, that's my bad.
but no, you ready to talk men's?
Yeah, I'm ready.
So tonight at 7 o'clock, Ole Miss taking on number 19 Ole Miss. I said last week that would probably be their best shot of getting a ranked conference win on the season, just because of the size advantage that the Gamecocks do have. Their best player is 6'1" guard Sean Padula. So, I mean, obviously they're a great team. They're ranked for a reason. They're higher than us in the SEC rankings, like every other team in the SEC. But, like, you look at their last game, maybe this could be a trap game for them. They only beat LSU by a few points, maybe a couple baskets. So, you know, they're the one team that's above us right now, or not the one team, the team directly above us, I should say. But so LSU not particularly a strong side this year, and they gave Ole Miss a game. So maybe the Gamecocks can do the same with Ole Miss. The reason I think that it's their best chance, I mentioned last week, I think that the rebounding stats speak for themselves. Colin Murray-Boyle is averaging 8.8 rebounds. Nick Pringle averaging 6.5, both of which is way more than the top rebounder for Ole Miss, who is Malik Dia with only 3.9 on the season. So I think if they're able to create those second chance opportunities like teams like Florida have done against us, I think it'll be a lot closer than Kentucky.
I take back everything I said last week. We have no hope. I am a negative Nelly today. I apologize, but I was so excited for that Kentucky game. I was like, this is their chance. This is their chance to prove us wrong, do something, and they crapped the bed. They lost by 23. So it was just really hard to watch. I fell asleep midway through because they just like them, we couldn't wake up. But this is our last chance to get a ranked conference win, unless a couple teams get ranked in the coming weeks. But it's hard to beat Florida. We're not beating Tennessee, and we can't even beat Vanderbilt. So I doubt we'll beat the unranked opponents left on the schedule because of how just alone on an island Colin Murray-Boyle is. I can't stress that enough. It is so hard to watch, and it's so frustrating. But this is our best opportunity. I have the same notes you do, Zander. It is a trap game for Ole Miss. Midweek road game, not close to home. I think Ole Miss can get caught sleeping, but the Gamecocks got to jump on them early. Get those rebounds early. Don't give them those second chance opportunities. Don't give them a chance to stack up those points. Whenever they can, they got to make sure they have a better shot at the end of the game than they have had previously in their last couple games. I have no analysis for Florida. Ain't nothing but a prayer.
So we weren't too even confident about Ole Miss, and then we had to take on number 3 Florida right after that.
Yeah.
Obviously, they came here and they beat us by 1 after we were up the entire game until Florida's last field goal. Yeah, that one's not looking good at all. They just beat the number 1 team in the country in Auburn. In the same week, they also beat number 22 Mississippi State. Walter Clayton continues to be a very, 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 very good player for them. Their best player on the season, averaging 17.5 points, 3.5 rebounds, and 4 assists. Like that, their offense runs around this guy. And even in those games against those 2 ranked teams, he had 19 in both games. So it's not looking good for our defense. ESPN has Carolina as an 8.6% chance to win. So maybe, so you're saying there's a chance.
Hey, I'm just going to say the other night, softball, we were down 4 in the final inning, and I turned to Calvin. I said, I've seen crazier things happen, and we went on to win 7-6. So I have seen crazier things happen.
But do you really think that will happen?
You know what? I'm going to stop being a negative Nelly. Yeah. I believe. Give me the Gamecocks. Please.
I think I'll go with Florida on that one. But, surely by the end of the season they win 1, right?
You think?
It's like the Wizards last year. They were like, it's at this point we don't want to be that team.
Yeah.
So I'm sure that's what every SEC team is thinking about us right now. Because, like you said, maybe last week around the Horseshoe, you said maybe they get 1, they start to string a few together. It's just not looking likely with their 2 matchups this week being both ranked opponents.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I'm trying to find something truly positive to say, but and they've been so close before. We are the best winless conference team in the country, and I will stand by that.
We might be the only winless conference team in the country.
Yeah.
But no, a super close game last time. Maybe if they knock down some of those free throws, maybe it'll be a different outcome. But I struggle to see a way in which the Gamecocks take care of business.
Yes.
In Gainesville.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, on the road is always tough. But that's why I think this is a trap game for Ole Miss, not to repeat myself, but it's a midweek game on the road. They could get caught sleeping, and you mentioned it. They don't want it to be them. They don't want to lose to the only winless team in the conference. I think they could have that added pressure of, same with the women Gamecocks. Oh, don't lose this game. Don't fall into the trap here. Don't overlook this team because things can happen like that. Wednesday night on the road, it's tough for Ole Miss. So I'm excited for tonight. I'm still able to work myself up to watch the games. It's just hard to watch right now. But they've got to get one. I think they can.
Surely. I mean, they still play LSU at the end of the season, so
They do.
At the very least, I think that one is a win.
They do. I mean, they should probably be right around 500, I'd say, this year. Maybe even a little bit better in conference play. But we'll just see how the rest of the season goes. We'll cheer them on no matter what.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
But yeah, that wraps up our show for tonight. Thanks for tuning in to Gamecock Game Day.
Be sure to follow us on Instagram, X, and Facebook at SGTV at USC. To keep up with all of our content, be sure to also visit us online at sgtv@usc.com. I'm Austin McConnell.
And I'm Zander Collins. From all of us here at SGTV, have a great night, Carolina. Forever to thee.